Hey folks, so it's Scott here with Kingfisher Culinary Solutions again today. We're going to be looking at doing steaks at home. Since the quarantine came up, a lot of people have been asking, how do I cook steak at home? Because you can't go out to the Keg or Montana's or maybe your favorite steakhouse, and a lot of people are having trouble. They're either overcooking or undercooking their meat, or undercooking it and then overcooking it in the same piece. So that being said, we're going to go through some basics here, how to season, how to grill. I'll do another tutorial a little later about how to pan fry the steak in case you don't have a barbecue or a grill or something like that, and we'll go through all those steps together. So folks, one of the important things to consider when you're trying to figure out how to cook your steak is the kind of cut of beef that you have. Steaks come in different portion sizes, different thicknesses, different tendernesses, from filet mignon to New York strip steaks to top sirloin. There is a difference, and it does impact how you cook your steak. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through two of the more common ones that you can access at your local grocery store, and we'll go through the seasoning of those. If you're looking to cook something like filet mignon or a particular cut in general, send me a message and I'm more than happy to walk you through how these things may differ for those. So first and foremost, guys, the most common kind of cut that you're going to see comes from a lot of restaurants and things like that. It's what's known as the New York strip cut. So what you'll see is, and I got these from Dutchie's, a local kind of grocery store. So what you'll see here is these cuts of beef are fairly thick. They're about an inch along the side there, and they've got a nice, what people will refer to as the grizzle, is this fat section along here that cooks up quite nicely. So I'd always recommend that before you cook your steak, you take them out of the fridge for at least 10, maybe 15 minutes before you're going to cook them, and just let them rest and come to temperature. What you'll find is it actually helps with the tenderness, and it prevents the steak from constricting, so that while you're cooking it, you're not having to bring some areas up to temp quicker than others. So folks, now that your steaks have been set out for about the 10 to 15 minutes after pulling them out of the fridge, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to season them. Now, the tricky thing about steak is once you've put it on the grill, it tends to lose about 35% of its flavor and seasoning as it cooks off. So one of the things you're going to want to make sure you do with your steaks is you're going to make sure that you season them a little bit more than you would think necessary. It doesn't have to be a lot. If you're trying to go sparingly with your seasoning, just know that you are going to lose some of that flavor as you put it on the grill. In the pan, it's a little different, but as I said in a later video, I'll show you how that one works. Right now, we're talking about specifically the barbecue, even an electric grill, something like that. If you season it very, very lightly, your steak is likely to come out a little bit bland because it cooks off some of the flavor in the seasoning, about 35%, as you transfer it from the barbecue to the plate. So in terms of seasoning your steak, I'm going to take these two out of the way for now and just show you what the one looks like for now. So what we're going to do is you're going to pull it to the center here. Now, what I'm using is simply just a little bit of the steak spice you can get at the local grocery store, and a little bit of olive oil. So very simple, very easy to do. This is your standard. If you want to play around with some other spices and stuff like that, feel free to. The method is pretty much the same either way. So what you're going to do is you're going to very lightly, you're going to take some of the olive oil, and your hands will get a little messy doing this, so it's always good to have. You're going to take it, and you're just going to rub the steak down in the exterior with a little bit of olive oil. This will keep the steak moist as you cook through, and then you're going to pick it up, you're going to flip it to the other side, you're going to take your olive oil again, ever so lightly. You don't need a lot, just enough to coat the entire edge, right? Make sure you get all sides. Now, what you're going to do with the seasoning is after you've washed your hands of all the olive oil, make sure you rub all your steaks down first. That way you're not having any of the seasoning stick to your hand while you're trying to rub down other steaks. So coat them all in the olive oil first. Take a little bit of your seasoning. Okay, so you'll see I've just got a little bit of a handful here. Now what you want to do as you're seasoning is you want to come up high. You don't want to be all the way down here. You want to come up high so that as it naturally falls and you move your way up and down the steak, right? Again, remembering that we're going to season a little more than we think it needs, just because 30% of it is going to come off in the wash. You'll see that it's nice and evenly coated because I was up high, not right against. So what you'll do is once that side's seasoned, you'll pick it up, flip it over, and repeat. So you've got a nice, evenly coated steak. And I'm a little short here, so I'm gonna grab a little bit more. I'm just gonna, again, from a height, don't worry about it if it doesn't all land on the steak, but what you'll see is at the end, you've got a nice, evenly coated steak on both sides. Okay folks, so now that you've got all of your steaks seasoned, ready to go, they're ready to hit the grill. There's one thing I wanted to bring up that stumps a lot of cooks and a lot of chefs when they first start out trying to cook steak the right way or cook steak to order, and this is the reason that a lot of your steaks can sometimes not be cooked properly when you go out to the restaurant, and that's this idea that the bigger the steak is, the longer it takes to cook. Logically, that would make sense, except in this case. So what I've got in front of you is I've got a very thick steak, which is the New York strip, and then I've got the thinner, but much larger, top sirloin cut there. Now logically you would think that the steak that's larger and weighs more would take longer to cook, but because it's thinner, the surface area of it actually intakes the heat a lot quicker and cooks through in a much shorter period of time than the denser steak on the left here, which kind of repels it and takes a longer time to cook. For that reason, a lot of restaurants, when they hand you a massive steak, it's very hard to get it medium rare or rare because the cooks have been leaving it on a little bit too long because of its size. So what I always like to tell people is a basic rule of thumb. If you want it well done, 20 minutes is usually a good mark where you can look at it. If you're looking for it rare, 2 to 3 minutes, maybe even 4 per side ought to be more than enough to get you a good sear and keep it red in the middle. For something like your standard New York strip, you're probably looking at about 8 minutes a side for a medium rare. Now, a lot of people have been going on the internet and they ask questions about, oh, I saw this thing where, if your wrist is medium rare and your thumb part is well done, somewhere in the middle is along how that works. I'm going to be honest with you. There are very few people who are adept enough to be able to recall with 100% what that feels like. Unless you want to have one hand on your wrist and one hand on your steak the entire time, which is impractical and we've all got better things to do, I would typically avoid that method until you've got a little more experience. The other thing to keep in mind is not all barbecues, not all ovens are the same. So I can tell you that I think it'll take, as a ballpark, 6 minutes aside for the large one to get it to a medium rare and 8 minutes aside for the thicker one to do medium rare. That's based on my personal experience with the tools that I have. Yours may be a little bit different. Your oven may run hotter. Your barbecue, you may be cooking it on high. That being said, all of this is a fluctuating scale that goes up and down based on a number of parameters. In order to keep it as accurate as possible, use the guideline, but use your best judgment. If you're comfortable and you feel that you have a good hand on the pulse of what's well done and what's mid-rare, feel free to try it. If it works for you, that's great. Typically what I've found is most chefs, most culinary people who are looking at it, use the guideline and their best judgment, and it'll come out perfect every time. It's an experience thing. You will mess a few up at the beginning. That being said, you'll really find what you like, and you'll also learn as you practice how to plan your meals so that everything comes out at the same time. Alright folks, so for this next part we've transitioned outside to the barbecue. So I'm going to show you how to lay your steaks on the grill, little safe practices and grilling technique there. Okay, so now that we've got the grill set up, we've preheated it, it's set to medium high. What you're going to do is you're going to open it up, just give it a second there, it should be good to go. You want to make sure you have a nice clean grill. It doesn't have to be immaculate, but you just want to make sure that everything is off the grill as it was. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to come over here to get those steaks that we just nicely seasoned. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to lay away from yourself, and that's to prevent splashing and all that kind of stuff. So what you're going to do, you see I've used the two big ones as an example here. You're just going to plop that end down and turn away from yourself to prevent the splashing. Now, if you've got a timer, now's the time to do that. You just turn it, fold the paper up real quick. Now I'm going to lay these big ones across horizontally like that. Now, if you remember earlier in the video, we said that we were going to do 6 minutes aside for the big one and 8 minutes aside for the thicker ones. So, once you've got those all lined up there, you can close up your lid and start your timer. So folks, back in the kitchen now after grilling up your steaks. You're going to want to let them sit for a couple minutes. They call it resting. This really brings out the flavor in it. It allows the juices to self-marinate and caramelize inside the meat itself. So you'll see, once again, we've got the strip loin and the top sirloin here. 2 steaks done, 6 minutes and 8 minutes. We're going to let them sit for a minute, and then I'll cut them up and show you what they look like on the inside. So with these 2 steaks here, a simple thing to do with most steaks is you want to make sure you're not slicing them or cutting them less than what I would say is about a ½ centimeter. Really, reason for that is you lose taste if you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to cut into this one right here so you can just kind of see. And as you see, it's got a nice pink in the center. It's seared through perfectly all the way around, but it's still got that nice medium rare in the center. And then for the top sirloin here, we'll do the same thing. And you'll see, once again, it's got a nice beveled edge, but it's nice and pink in the center there for you. So, ultimately, feel free to try it at home, and that's how you prepare your steak.